It's a pleasure to speak with you. Big fan of the series.
Oh,
Amazing
thanks.
series, amazing work on your end, and just a pleasure to watch.
Thank you.
So, when you joined up, what did you know about Kim's arc?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing. Nothing. We didn't even know what their past relationship was or what the current status of their relationship was. Peter and Vince said they are each other's confidants. They came up through the mailroom and have been very close friends for 10 years. And we're not sure if it ever was romantic or ever will be romantic. We haven't answered a lot of questions about that, this, that, and the other. And that's about it. And then I just used that and the details that were in that first script, the sharing of the cigarette, the fact that she, as written, she lets him take it out of her mouth and put it back. I was like, oh, they're very close. And then I knew she was supposed to, be like, I think early 30s when we start. So I was like, who comes up through the mailroom? Like, where does she come from? I decided that she must have been like coming from somewhere else and decided to drastically change her life. So that gave me some information. And then we share the line where he says, couldn't you just, meaning help him out when he has this Ned Beatty, you will atone monologue explosion upstairs. And I say, I can't. So I was like, oh, she has boundaries about work. They know each other well enough to finish each other's sentences. She seems very concise in her language as opposed to him. And then it says she walks out and without looking writes the dented trash can that he kicked and goes on her way. And I thought, oh, she cleans up his messes so habitually she doesn't even notice it. And I held on to all of those things and just kept building blocks on those as we went.
That's wonderful. I mean, such amazing insight. I love to hear these stories and to hear what people, actors and actresses bring into the character, because some people say, oh, it's what's on the page, and others like have this whole, could write a diary essentially. It's wonderful.
Yeah, and her being so economic with her language to me started this this journey of me thinking, well, in my next couple of scripts, I noticed that I didn't have any contractions. And I later asked the writers, like years later, asked them if that was on purpose, and they didn't remember what I was talking about. But I think like season 1 and 2, probably, there were almost no contractions, and that might not seem like a big deal, but it is. Like, do not instead of don't, will not instead of won't. Like, think not just gonna, I'm talking about all of them. And I was like, that's strange. And I was going to ask them, hey, is it a big deal if I elide these things? Then I thought, well, let's investigate who would speak like that before you go asking somebody to change it, which I think is it's a mistake that I and other actors make too soon, to start saying like, well, is there a way that I could massage this language, whatever. Just, especially when you have a script written like this, that they take so long to write. It's not at all done, quickly under the gun. I was just like, oh, I wonder what kind of person is that particular about their speech and is in so many scenes not speaking, because being silent can be a position of weakness or a position of strength. And I knew it was more interesting for it to be a position of strength. So then I thought, well, if you don't want to be misinterpreted in the way you're speaking, then maybe you don't like being misinterpreted in your body language either. And I got very still. And then it became this whole thing of her really not wanting anybody to know what she's thinking or what she's doing. And that trickled down into like when I had the joy of being asked about when they were building her condominium for the first time, and they wanted to know if I had photos and stuff, the set designers and the set deck. And I said, I don't think and in her office. And I said, I don't think she wants anybody to ask her about who her relatives are. It just, you know what I'm saying? Like, it just keeps building. And we were like, well, if you're someone that's that private, would you really want somebody to go by your desk and say like, oh, is that your sister? Oh, is that your
Yeah, yeah.
spring break? Like, no, she would hate that.
Well,
So it
there's
just
things, there's
kept
certain guards
building.
you put up by yeah, avoiding putting those things there. It's pretty much putting up a wall. You're not giving
Yeah.
anyone that in to
Mm-mm.
know you, to meet you.
Yeah. And by, so then in relief and by contrast, it made, which I didn't plan this, but it worked very well for me anyway. It made the fact that she takes off that armor with Jimmy all the more important. Like, she rarely lets her guard down, and he was this one little bubble where she did.
So if you fast forward to season 6, it's a season full of secrets and twists. And when did you get scripts episode by episode, or how were those delivered to you?
Yeah, we got them episode by episode.
Okay.
I knew a little more than I normally would for a couple of reasons. One is, and Peter and Vince as well have been very public about the fact that they don't write a Bible for the whole season. They don't like to
Mhm.
put in mileposts that you have to meet, even if it's not appropriate for the character. You know, I wasn't even supposed to be there for all of the seasons, I know, and Jimmy was supposed to become Saul by the end of season 1. Hamlin was going to be the evil guy. Michael McKean playing Chuck was going to be this sort of soft, sad sack like heart of the story, where you realize that Jimmy had a soft side because he was taking care of this invalid, and like none of that is the way it went. And it's so great that they didn't have to force themselves into these markers. But by the last season, because there was so much to wrap up, well, a couple of things. The pandemic slowed us down starting, so they got to write further along than they may have in the scripts. That, and then there was the fact that Peter had this monumental task of wrapping up Breaking Bad stories, Better Call Saul stories, many characters, and figuring out what doing right by all of that at the same time as writing a finale that he wanted to write, and ending the story the way he wanted to end it. So we did find out a lot of things. And then there was just technical stuff, like because I needed to be fitted for a wig, they had to tell me, and I was like, why am I wearing a wig? So this was an unusual season where I got wind of some things prior. My scene with Jesse Pinkman also had to be shot out of order. So they had to tell me what that scene was, and that had to do with location and scheduling.
It's amazing hearing the pieces come together, because as a fan reading online, and I try to avoid spoilers or even theories, but I see people guessing everything, and to hear from the the other side of the camera, or other side of the screen, how this all comes together, it's really fascinating. And it's amazing that they pulled it off, because this isn't just an extent of Jimmy's and Kim's story, but it's also connects so deeply into Breaking Bad, and to just an ambitious thing. And bravo to all of you.
No, thank you.
So do you feel Kim got caught up in Jimmy's ways, or do you feel like he allowed her to expose that part of herself that had been there all along? Because they start with these cons early on, and by the end of season 5, was it, I believe, it's a completely different side of Kim that we see.
I don't think he brought up anything in her that was not already there, but I think that they both ignited things in each other, and that's what she's saying when they break up, is that there's some ignition point that's going on between the two of them that can be used for good and could be used for evil, and they went down the wrong path. But I think that's one of the interesting questions that the whole series asks, is like, what's learned behavior versus what's innate behavior, and who are you? It's impossible to unravel who you are independent of every relationship you've had, or independent of your past, or independent of who your family is or your upbringing. It's not possible to figure out, like, well, what's my true self? And so that question fascinated me the whole time. And I think it was very easy early on for people to say, Jimmy's he's bringing her down, but it wasn't that. And there's times where they raise each other up, and there's times where she was not a good influence. And I always thought that she probably came from a familiarity with scamming and people that take shortcuts and the trouble that it leads to. And I think it's part of the reason she was so resistant to do anything, to color outside of the lines in the beginning. She was attracted to somebody that does, but insistent upon not doing it herself. And that push-pull, to me, had to come from something that she grew up with in the past. And I personally always thought probably raised by an addict of some kind, which also would explain the cleaning up the messes, and constantly trying to control the environment and all of this kind of stuff. But it wasn't until years later that they did that flashback and showed my mom as an alcoholic. And I was like, oh, that's what I thought.
Your work's amazing throughout, but episode 12 of the final season, Waterworks, is just incredible, and it's heart-wrenching. And there's so much that goes on and so much that gets said, often without saying anything. What does that episode mean to you, and what did you think of it when you read that? What was your reaction?
My first reaction was, oh, they're going to find out that I'm actually not good enough. I was like, oh, the jig is up. This is going to be too hard. But then I was just thrilled to just dig in. It's a very technically challenging episode, that you just have to sit down and just do the homework first, and then get to the fun stuff of like, what do I think I'm thinking here, and all of that. And by that I mean just talking to Vince and Peter. Vince was directing that one, about like who is she? Because there's also first of all, who is this Kim that we've never seen before, and then trying to calibrate when you see the cracks that like that the real Kim is in there behind this new Kim in the eyes somewhere. But also, like, was it suppressed prior to that, or is she unaware of it? And the answers we were finally coming to is she's been living this life long enough and assigned herself this sort of penance long enough that she's content. For all practical purposes, she's content. She's not miserable. And it's only in contrast to what we have seen and what we are aware of about her that it looks so terrible. This person who can't make a decision about mayonnaise, can't make up her mind on the phone, can't pick an ice cream flavor for a birthday party, passionless, perfectly fine but passionless relationship, perfectly fine but passionless job, clothes and bangs and everything that just says, don't look at me, don't look at me, don't look at me. So figuring out who that person was, deciding the why, suppressing the why, and then bringing the why out was cool. It was a cool journey to take.
And it's beautiful how they bookended Jimmy and Kim's relationship with the sharing of the cigarette. I was wondering, do you ultimately have a hopeful take on the final moments of the series?
I do, but I'm the wrong person to ask. I'm a hopeless
romantic. I'm just like your take, because I have a hopeful take, and I see people online, saying, "Oh, this is terrible," and it should have been, they wanted some kind of happy, really happy surprise party ending. And I'm like, no, that's not.
Well, to those people, I would say you should watch Breaking Bad again. Like, Jimmy just walking free, it's like he did a lot more than the antics we saw in Better Call Saul. And Kim, we have to keep in mind that Kim has at least read in the paper some of what he has been accused of orchestrating, facilitating, or doing. And there are horrific acts. But she truly, and I think there's so much weight to her saying, "Hi, Jimmy," when she walks into that holding cell. She's saying, I see the real you, which to me was always this profound relationship linchpin with them, is that they saw each other. They truly saw each other in ways that they both felt unseen when they went outside that door. And so she's saying, I see the humanity, I see you, and I know you still see me. And they share a cigarette, to me, symbolizing like this connection will always be here. And she will always love him, and he will always love her. And she believes there has to be some freedom. He did a lot more than she did. He did criminal, horrific acts that she did not do. There's a reason why she's not in prison. Is she happy he's in prison? No, but she's happy that he has found some relief for his soul. And I think by the time she turns around, coupled with the fact that you see her start to volunteer at a law clinic, I personally think that she intends to figure out how to decrease his sentence, but legally and not in a scamming way. And Peter's been very public about the fact that we did shoot me doing finger guns back at him and that he cut them. Which at first I was sad because I really wanted her to let him know, I got you. I'm not leaving you here to be forgotten. I will remain, in your life and by your side in some capacity. And Peter said, well, when we watched it in the editing bay, it looked like I'm back in the scam. I'm back in the game. We're going to scam you out of here, which to me just would fully diminish and ruin the work that Jimmy had done, the work that Bob, the actor, had put into Jimmy having this evolution, the work I put into Kim. It just it would ruin that. And so I told him, and he said, what you wanted to say, Ray, is in the eyes. The finger guns were not necessary. And so then I was like, oh, great, totally. And I trust him implicitly anyway. So I found the ending as hopeful as it could be while still being as smart as our fans are. It shouldn't be dumb. It should be smart.
No, it shouldn't be. I absolutely love that answer. You gave me the chills. And honestly, I think I almost cried for a second. I just love the series and love to hear the passion that you put into it. And the fact that, oh, there you go. Hey,
told ya.
That looks like my cat too. Very similar. But, and to see it, to play out and to walk away after investing years as a fan and saying they did it right. I can put this on the shelf. It's, well done. Quick question, just to close out. Do you think they ever see each other again? Or was that the final?
Absolutely.
Goodbye?
Absolutely. I mean it. I didn't mean it figuratively when I said she's saying, I'm not leaving you to be forgotten. I think she continues to visit. I feel she definitely goes back to Florida and alters her life, but it isn't about, and Peter even talked about this, she can't just, because we talked about her having a ponytail in the last scene, or her dyeing her hair back to blonde, and he was like, it needs to not look like a reset. He was like, I want them to live on. I want the characters and their relationship to live on in people's minds after the screen goes black. You shouldn't have an answer that you're like, and we're done. And so I think he achieved that. And I think it's a slow progression, but I think there are many more cigarettes to be had. That shouldn't be a romantic answer, but in this case it is.
Hey, it's awesome. It's I want to be hopeful too, because of the sacrifices, not the sacrifices, but the changes in them both. And if you kind of want some kind of reward. He didn't have to get the punishment he took. He he kind of chose.
Yeah, he went beyond what she was probably even gonna suggest. Yeah. So maybe she'll find some kind of technical issue with the trial and the admission of things that were not supposed to be charged. I don't know. Let's say that's what happens.
I love it. I have 1,000 more questions, but I'm out of time. So thank you so much for your time today, and thank you so much for your work on the series. It's fantastic.